Welcome, Jamie Wall, Wisconsin State Senate District 30 candidate, to this interview sponsored by Joshua and the League of Women Voters of Greater Green Bay. We will ask 6 questions with time at the end for you to add anything else you want the voters to know. Are you ready?
Sure, thanks for having me.
Let's begin. Please tell us about yourself and why you are running.
Sure, well, I grew up here in Brown County on my family's dairy farm just south of De Pere. Learned a little bit about hard work in that experience. Public schools, it was the first in my family to go to college as well, and that's actually one of the reasons I'm running. I mean, I think that I had the opportunity to get off to a good start in life because the taxpayers of Wisconsin had, provided a good public education for me, both K-12 and at the university level. And I think that should be true of kids today, no matter where they're from or who their parents are. In my adult life, I've worked mostly in the business world. I run my own small business consulting practice where I work with primarily medical device companies in the eye care space, and I've lived in the same house in Green Bay for the last, it'll be 20 years in spring. As to why I'm running, I'd like to try to get government on the side of regular people. I hear a lot from folks who are struggling with the cost of living, whether that's groceries or gas or things that state government has a little bit more control of, like healthcare, like the cost of housing, which I think we'll talk a little bit more about later, and about childcare. And finally, on that front, the state is running record budget surpluses right now, and we should give some of that money back to the citizens, back to the taxpayers in a form of a tax cut to the people who need it. So those are some of the ways that, some of my priorities and some of the people that I want to represent in Madison.
Thank you. Most people agree that the aging Green Bay and Waupun prisons must be closed. Would you support these closures without building a new prison? Please explain.
Sure. Well, there's a problem in those facilities. I mean, they're old, they're inefficient, they require a lot more staffing than more modern facilities would, and as you've seen if you've been reading the newspapers, they're often unsafe, both for the inmates and for the people who work there. My dad was actually prison guard at the Alloway at the Green Bay Correctional Institution for 34 years, so I got a little bit of sense of what that was like from him, back in the day anyhow. But one of the things I learned in my business career is that it's not enough to say, look, there's a problem over there. You also have to come up with a solution. So we can't say just close the prisons without having an idea of what we're going to do with the inmates who live there. And that means taking a step back and looking at what the prison system should look like, and you can't do that without thinking about what the criminal justice system in Wisconsin should look like. Other states, including Texas, which isn't exactly run by a bunch of crazy liberals, have had success in bringing down prison populations while preserving public safety by doing things like increasing alcohol and drug treatment for nonviolent offenders. Now, unfortunately, in Madison, all of that has been bollocksed up in partisanship, and I think my opponent would contribute to that. He's been talking about the problem for a decade, but I've offered more in terms of solutions in the last minute than he has over all that time. So I'd look forward to working to figure out a way where we can preserve some public safety, do better by everyone concerned with the prison system and as well.
Thank you. Your second question. The current lack of affordable housing is a huge issue for so many families.
Sure.
What are your thoughts regarding the recipients of rental vouchers being a protected class and imposing regulations on landlords in regard to how much they are able to charge for monthly rent? Other states put caps on how much landlords are allowed to charge. Would you be in support of either of these changes?
Housing affordability is a big issue, and I hear this from people at the doors. I mean, my house has gone up in value from maybe $120,000 to almost double that in the past 5 or 10 years. And on the one hand, great for me and everyone who already owns a house. But if you're trying to afford that first mortgage, or if you're a renter and your rent goes up and down with housing cost around you, it's a big issue. I think there's a few ways to address that. One of them, and first and foremost in my mind, is working to build more housing of all types, whether it's single-family housing, whether it's apartments, whether it's for low-income folks, whether it's not, because it's just as a matter of supply and demand, the more options for people in general, the more affordable options there'll be for people as well. The state has some programs now that make it easier for first-time home buyers. Think young families trying to stretch for that down payment for their first mortgage. And I think we can do more with that, especially given the financial condition of the state right now. I would be just fine with making people who have rental vouchers not be discriminated against. I think that's part of the solution, but I do want to make sure we are looking at how we increase the supply of housing, because I really think that's probably the best lever we have in order to make housing affordable for everybody, from the top of the market to the bottom.
Thank you. Next question. We believe that democracy works best when citizens can interact with their elected representatives between elections.
Sure.
If elected, how do you plan to remain engaged?
Right. Well, I guess the first thing I'd say is that I'm here talking to you today, and I understand my opponent is not going to be here talking to you today, so that may indicate something about the relative value that we place on that. I've put a lot of work into engaging with the community and the voters in running here. I've handed out thousands of Packer schedules at community events. I knocked on door number 11,000 a few days ago, and I don't want to be too romantic about that, but it does give you a good sense. I've lived here a large majority of my adult life, and I've still learned things about we talked about housing, about what is the condition of the housing stock in different parts of the area. And a couple things were eye-opening. I walked up to a door a few days ago and there was a condemned sign on it, and wondered what the story was behind that. And more seriously, occasionally you just learn from people the doors and their stories. I've talked to two grandmothers, and not old grandmothers, people about my age who were raising their grandkids because they had a daughter who'd died of a drug overdose, involving fentanyl. And the first time that happened, I kind of said, oh, it's a terrible tragedy. And the second time, I thought, oh my gosh, we may have a real issue here. So I think there's value in engaging. So in terms of what I would do, I'm going to be out in the community at different functions. I'm going to be at 3 today. One was at 1 already this morning, and you'll see me out and about the community if the voters send me to Madison. Yeah.
Next question. What is your current position on current reproductive health laws in Wisconsin,
Sure.
and what, if anything, would you change?
Well, first and foremost, I trust the women of Brown County. I think they ought to have the freedom to make their own decisions about some of the most intimate things in their life without me getting in the way of that. They should be able to talk to their doctors and not have to clear things with their state senator. Not everybody feels that way, including my opponent who supports the 1849 abortion ban in Wisconsin, which doesn't have any exceptions for rape or incest, and would jail doctors and nurses. So that seems to me kind of extreme. And there's some people who don't even want to stop there. There are Republican states. There's at least one Republican state senator in Brown County who would ban in vitro fertilization and many forms of birth control. And to me, that's just crazy. These decisions are best left to women and their doctors and their families. Politicians should know their place, and it's not in the bedroom of their constituents. So that's where I stand.
Thank you. What is your position on school vouchers in Wisconsin?
Well, I mentioned, my folks, almost all parents worked hard to get me off to a good start in life, and the fact that there was a quality public school system for me and for them made that a lot easier. So that's really one of the foundations of our society, of our democracy, and the state hasn't been holding up its end of the bargain on that recently. All you need to know is over the past several years, every school district in my Senate district has gone to referendum. And what that means is they ask the voters, can we have some additional property tax funding, to operate or to pay for a new facility or fixing up an old one. And all those referendums have passed. So clearly, the voters of Brown County place a value in their public school systems. But the net effect of that over time is you're shifting more and more of the cost of the schools away from state funding and onto the local property taxpayers. And look, nobody likes any tax, all right, I get that. But property taxes in particular are really difficult for senior citizens, for folks on fixed incomes. And the more you shift in that direction, I worry that we're going to start to undermine public support for the public school system. So again, with the surplus that the state is running, there's no reason why we can't do better by our kids, by our parents, and at the same time, by our local property taxpayers. And first and foremost, public dollars ought to go to supporting public schools.
This is your sixth question. What do you think about the fairness and integrity of Wisconsin elections?
Right.
And what changes, if any, would you propose?
Sure. Well, let me start out by saying it's important for voters to believe and to know that their vote counts, just like everyone else's does, and the whole election system is run in a fair and thoughtful and safe way. Now, fortunately, I think that's the case, in the U.S. and especially here in Wisconsin. There've been, multiple court cases around recent elections, and none of them has shown any issues of any importance. I think, unfortunately, there's some politicians who have lost elections or who think they may lose an election that's coming up, and they've spread a bunch of misinformation and conspiracy theories often about our election systems. And, I know people who volunteer to work at the polls, and it's a thankless job. You're there for 12, 14 hours. You don't get paid barely anything. And these are not sinister people who are, part of some conspiracy against the public. These are just decent folks who want to step up and help their community and help their neighbors. So, anything that the state can do to help fund our elections to make sure that we're able to conduct them in a fair and impartial way, that's wonderful. But I think the other thing that any public official at any level has to do with this is to reassure the voters that we do have an election system that works in this country, despite what some politicians will tell you because of their own interests. And it's dangerous for democracy if people lose that trust. And like I said, I think we have reason to believe that we're in good shape here in Wisconsin and across the country. But we can trust our elections.
As we wrap up,
yes.
Please add anything else you would like the voters to know.
Right. Well, let me just loop back to some of the things I said up front. Growing up in the farm taught me that how to work hard, and I've talked to a lot of people around the community who are working hard and are having a harder time getting by. They feel the pressure on their family budgets, and we've all seen the cost of a lot of things going up. So one of my priorities is going to be to try to get state government on the side of those people. It's going to try to help them when we can. They're not going to give me a magic wand, and I can't solve all the world's problems by myself, but you can push in the right direction. And we talked a little bit about some of the things the state can do to make housing more affordable. There's lots of things to do in healthcare that we can do, taking some federal Medicaid money, working to keep the price of prescription drugs down in the states that will have a real impact on family budgets and real people's lives. And I guess the other thing I hear from people, not everybody, but if you have small kids, you certainly know a lot about the cost of childcare and what that's like. So the state is already doing some things on that front and to help families afford childcare. And help get people back into the workplace, and that's a win for everybody's concerned. So I just want you to know that I'm going to work for the people in Brown County who will hopefully send me to Madison, and I'm not going to forget who you are. And I'm going to do my best. I'm probably not going to get everything right, but I'm going to work hard to do the right thing for the greater Green Bay area and the district as a whole.
Thank you, Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
We have been speaking with Jamie Wall, candidate for State Senate District 30. Thank you.